at the Milwaukee Mile as we're ready for the Miller Genuine Draft 200 roll for the pole at the Wisconsin State Fair Park. Hi, I'm Paul Page. Right over here, right now, they're warming up the Honda engine on Andre Ribeiro's car. This is identical to the car that Scott Goodyear drove at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last week and almost won the race with. So they're getting it ready. The alcohol fuels are just washing all over us right now. A couple of things to update you on before we get going here, though. Almost everybody here is wearing these little ribbons that say "Get Well Stan," and of course that's for Stan Fox. Now we've got some great news on him after that first lap accident at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway last week, and that is that he's made a substantial recovery in the past 48 hours. He is now listed in fair condition in the neurointensive care unit at Methodist Hospital of Indiana in Indianapolis, and he has opened his eyes. They seem very pleased with his progress thus far, and certainly all the wishes of everybody here, all the racers, the fans, they want to say, Stan, get well, get back very quickly. Now what we have here today is qualifying for the Milwaukee Mile for the Indy cars. That means some really red-hot speeds. It's a nice, simple qualifying, a warm-up lap, then 2 laps, off they go. So let's take a look at the qualifying order here. Mauricio Guzman, who you remember led at Indy and has led at Milwaukee this year, will start off. Raul Boesel is the current track record holder at 165.7 miles an hour. That's set back in '93. Then Jimmy Vasser, Carlos Guerrero, who've been practicing very good today. Alessandro Zampedri. Lynn St. James had a little trouble this morning because she was in an accident up against one of the walls, and they were struggling to get that car back in action. So as we look down through the entire qualifying order, and they shut down the Honda engine, and we can hear a little better. Stefan Johansson, Christian Fittipaldi, Michael Andretti, Robbie Gordon, Paul Tracy, so a bunch of fast guys grouped in the middle there. Then the Indy champion, Jacques Villeneuve. Al Unser Jr., yep, the Penske's are back. And Jill DeFerrin, Buddy Lazier, Emerson Fittipaldi, Hiro Matsushita, Ribeiro, Fernandez, Brian Herta, Eddie Cheever, Danny Sullivan. There are 27 cars here, actually 26. Eliseo Salazar and Teo Fabi, who was the quickest in the morning practice. Now, let's go down to Gary Gerald as we start to review some of these stories of the day.
Well, Paul, here's a man that we think is going to be a contender for the pole today, Michael Andretti. And Michael, the reason we're saying this is because late in the warm-up session this morning, or the practice session, you were one of the fastest consistent cars on the racetrack. So many of the quicker times seem to come early in the cool of the day. How confident are you now as you get ready to qualify?
Well, I feel pretty good about it, but, you know, I don't know. Pole doesn't mean a whole lot. You get that 1 point, but for the outcome of the race, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. So, you know, if we can make top 5, we'll be happy. But it was good being able to run that time in the end because the track was getting a little slippery near the end.
This track is a handful, not so much because of cornering speeds or banking, but because of the abrasive and the rough surface. You really get kind of manhandled on this mile compared to some of the other miles, and most recently you were at Nazareth.
It's great. I really like this track. You know, I think it has a lot of character, and that's one thing that the bumps give you, and the surface itself, the way it just eats the tires alive. So it really slows the cars down itself. You know, this is one track that we're not really going too fast because the surface takes care of itself for slowing the speeds down in a race.
I'll tell you another reason why he likes this place. He's won here 4 times. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, Gary, we talked about Raul Boesel being the record holder here. Well, Raul Boesel found himself in 20th position this morning because of a pop-off problem. We look back here. Here's the pop-off valve. Right now, this car is being warmed. What seems to be happening is that when these cars go over the bumps, that what's happening is a shock wave is going through the car as the car bottoms, and what that's doing, it's causing this particular pop-off valve to release that boost pressure. Now, for some reason, it seems to be only the Mercedes power plants that are having a real problem with this, and the teams are left really with the only option of raising these Mercedes cars higher off the ground so they don't bottom and run into this pop-off problem. Paul?
Well, we'll keep track of some of those stories for you. Here's Mauricio Guzman, 32 years old. He lives in Florida now, originally from Brazil. The car itself is a 95 Reynard Cosworth. It is shot with Goodyear tires as he streaks down the main straightaway, not yet starting on the run. And his best start here, of course, 17th. Best practice speed thus far at 155. Remembering the track record, 165. And Raul Boesel set that. Raul was also on the pole here last year at 161.3 miles an hour. That track record was actually set in 93. So we watch for green flag now. He's going to take the full 2 warm warm-up laps. So we'll get 2 laps of warm-up, which they're entitled to. They can go either time. And then in this qualifying, what they do is they take the fastest of 2 laps. So it's 2 miles, as fast as you can go. They're going to take the faster of the 2 laps. And what we'll be anxious to see with the sun bearing down on this track now is whether or not that will have an effect and might loosen the car up much quicker than they expect. He's on the run now, Mauricio Guzman. Jan Bikas, what do you think about the sun?
Well, Paul, right now it's really the hottest part of the day, and I think it's going to maintain about the same temperature throughout everyone's run. So I doubt we're going to see varied track conditions like we saw at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Everybody today, I think, is going to get an equal shot.
All right, he comes across, and he's starting to run at this point. So we'll keep a track of him right now. Actually moved out and then took 2 on the track at speed, up to speed now. In the car, Bernard Fort Cosworth. Guzman has been incredibly quick and seems to like the ovals. Coming to the conclusion of that first lap. At 22.7 seconds, 159.5 miles an hour. The first lap for Mauricio Guzman. Down the backside. Guzman comes to the final of his 2 laps. And it dropped off. So it dropped off on the second lap to 22.6 or 158.9 miles an hour. So Mauricio Guzman is qualified. All of these cars should theoretically make it into the field. That's assuming no accident. They can take the full subscription here. The question I think that will come up is the order, and Michael Andretti has already suggested to you that on a tight course like that, like this is, even the order is not particularly significant. So now Raul Boesel moves out onto the course.
Paul, another note on Mauricio Guzman. That is considerably faster than he ran this morning, where he ran a 23.2, so he'll be real happy with that one.
Well, we'll see what he can do now. A little hotter out here. Mauricio pulling in down at the far end of the pit lane here. There's his time and speed. Of course, that makes him provisional pole sitter for Milwaukee. Yeah. Raul Boesel, 37 years old. Now makes his home over at Key Biscayne, Florida. Twice he's been on the pole here. Green flag now out for Raul Boesel. As he works her down into one. Generally, what they try to do is only apex this turn once. You see as he drifted across the line there. Comes off of turn 2 onto the backstretch. 1 mile around the Milwaukee Mile, very flat. And again, tries to dial her in, bring her as close to the line. Only 1 touch for the 2 turns. First lap is complete at 22.6. 22.6, 158 miles an hour. For Guzman's first round, it slowed down. We'll see if it picks up for Raul Boesel. So the checkered flag for Raul, and he does pick up the speed at 22.649, 158.9 miles an hour. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Mauricio Guzman has just gotten out of the cockpit. Mauricio, you said you like the fact that you're the first man out. First of all, how happy are you with your qualifying speed?
I mean, basically, we're average. We've been doing 22.2 here testing, and we can't match that time. I think it's just warmer now. But I'm really happy to be the first one out so my crew can get on with the engine change, because that's the first time we're going to have the warm-up on Saturday.
So I understand what we want to clarify is that they make the engine change because your final practice rather than Sunday morning now becomes late Saturday afternoon. So there's a bit of a timetable here.
Yeah, exactly. So they have plenty of time to do the engine change, and then we can get the car right for the race.
Do you like these mile ovals?
I'm starting to enjoy this, and especially Milwaukee is really nice because it makes a great race.
All right, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Most of the drivers with Formula One and road racing experience are a little hesitant on the miles first off. But then after a couple of years of running on them, perhaps not even that much time, they tend to like them. In fact, some of them, Eddie Cheever, for example, comes out of Formula One, says he enjoys the mile. Flew on the flight up here to Milwaukee from Indianapolis with him. He said he absolutely loves running miles now. This is Jimmy Vasser, one of 2 cars as he starts his run, taking the green flag. One of 2 cars in the Chip Ganassi stable. And of course, Jimmy led at the Indianapolis 500 last week, finally ending his day against the wall as Scott Pruitt dived under him going into turn 3. Talented driver with a lot of oval experience. First lap completed for Vasser. 22.751, 158.2 miles an hour, the first lap. At speed in the upper left-hand corner, that, of course, is Gugelman's. And there's Jimmy Vasser completing his second lap. And Jimmy Vasser has qualified for the Miller Genuine Draft 200. We'll be right back. And here we go. Qualifying continues. This is Carlos Guerrero. At Indianapolis last week, got caught up in that first turn accident. He is the 4th attempt to qualifier today. Raul Boesel is the quickest at 1:59.6. Then Gugelman rounds out the front row, and then Jimmy Vasser inside the second row. Here's our 4th qualifier. Let's go to Gary.
Raul Boesel, your feelings now about this qualifying run, and is it going to be good enough to stay on the pole for how long, do you think?
I don't know. I'm very surprised because and glad because we improved the car a lot. Improved 1 second from the practice this morning. We have a lot of problems. It still didn't solve the main problem that we have, and it's still in qualify. And the car was running well. I was just glad that we make a big jump from this morning. It's 1 second. This place is quite a lot.
The smile shows that they're making progress, Paul.
Carlos Guerrero's first lap in at 22.9 or 156.8 miles an hour. Here is his second lap complete at 22.9 as well, 156.6. So it fell off just a bit as Carlos Guerrero now runs into this field. 4 cars qualified. Next up should be the Italian, Alessandro Zampedri. Bright sunshiny day here at Milwaukee. There's Zampedri as he begins to roll out. That, of course, will have some effect on the tires and their adhesion to the surface. And if what we learned at Indianapolis was in fact true, very real possibility that the Firestone tires might actually fare better on this hot surface. Zampedri drives a 94 Lola chassis. Cosworth power, Firestone tires. Still warming up for Zampedri. He had a problem with his car this morning as well, didn't he, Jan Beekes? Jan Beekes, you with me?
Yes, Paul.
Zampedri, he had a little bit of a problem this morning too, did he not?
Well, yes, he did. He lost it, I believe, over in turn number 4. And of course, anytime that you have a problem in the practice before qualifying, that's going to be going through his mind each time he goes through there.
So Zampedri continues his warm-up. 34 car. There's Raul Boesel, speed to beat today. He is provisionally on the pole. Gugelman would be outside the front row provisionally. Vasser inside the second. And then Carlos Guerrero. Time coming off of the north turns here, 3 and 4. Stable down through 1 and 2. This is where he got in trouble coming to the start of this run, and where he got in trouble this morning. No problems right now. Zampedri's first lap. 24.3 or 147.8 miles an hour. I'm not going to be very happy with that run. Well, off the pace, almost 10 miles an hour off the pace of the other 4 cars thus far qualified. Now he works his second and final lap. They take the fastest of the two. And Zampedri slowed it down a little bit and finished his last lap with a 24.0 and will go in as the 5th qualifier, but with a speed at 149 miles an hour. It's not going to be a very satisfactory run. 149.410. I'm sure he's going to be disappointed with that, but nevertheless, you heard Michael Andretti this morning just say, hey, here you line up, you go. Position is not as critical as at many races. So here is Stefan Johansson from Sweden, currently lives in Indianapolis, Indiana. Just bought a new home in Indianapolis, and it's a log cabin out on the northwest side of the city. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, Paul, Lynn St. James was scheduled to be on the track right now ahead of Stefan Johansson, but Lynn this morning had a heavy hit against the wall, damaged the car extensively. The crew tried to make repairs. We just checked with them a short time ago. They were unable to complete the repairs. What they're hoping is that they'll get clearance for her to start at the back of the pack tomorrow. So she will not make a qualifying run this afternoon after heavy contact with the wall. We should point out she was uninjured.
All right, so Stefan Johansson rolling on the course. There's Tony Bettenhausen. Jan Pikus, you have an update on Stefan?
Yes, we had a chance to talk with Tony Bettenhausen moments ago, and we asked, well, what is the situation with the Reynard? Of course, he had a Reynard with a Ford power plant that got him into the Indy 500. He said, well, I didn't have a choice of running that here because I leased that car from our Sierra Wells and leased the engine from Ford. So now we're back to the Penske. That's what he has to run for the rest of the year.
Well, it is a car, in fact, that has performed fairly well thus far in the season for him, as Stefan Johansson jumps up with a 22.7, 158. And that makes him 4th quick at the moment. Once again, Raoul speed to beat, 159.6. Whoa, and up to the wall. Johansson got it in trouble in the north end, and that's going to slow the qualifying down while they clean up from that. He looked to be okay. Tony Bettenhausen obviously disappointed. That could be a very, very expensive hit. You'll notice, too, that the cars here, where you see his car, carrying that fin on the back that helps stabilize the air as it comes off the rear wing. Here he is as he starts down into turn 3, and the back end just starts tracking around on him as it comes loose in this hot sun, and gets him very quickly up into the wall with some fairly severe damage to the left rear. But the good news is that Stefan appears to be okay as a result of this accident. Their option now, of course, is to go to a backup car and try and qualify it, or to perhaps look for the possibility tomorrow of a provisional start in the backup car, or this car totally repaired. Right now, Tony Bettenhausen will go back and meet his driver, and they'll discuss those possibilities. So here's the way they line up thus far, and this is all provisional. Anybody can jump in and eclipse Raoul Boysel's speed, for example, but it's Boysel and Gugelman in the front row, and Jimmy Vasser and Stefan Johansson in the second row, and the third row right now is made up of Carlos Guerrero and Alessandro Zampedri. So let's go to Gary Gerald, find out what they're going to do about Johansson's car.
Well, you can see the crew here, Paul, working now. They've covered the entire left side of the car. Heavy contact. There is extensive damage. That's a 94 Penske chassis. Now, if we turn around here, here's the backup car, but this is a 93 chassis. They're a little reluctant to have to go to this one, but they have no choice, it would appear. Stefan Johansson just walked back by us here a moment ago. Maybe I'll try to hustle over here, Paul, and see if I can get a word as he talks with his engineer and his crew.
Hit the bottom, just run around. I don't know if the fucking pressure's going to come up with that hard. Like the guy said in the front, they saw it. It's like both rear wheels and off the ground. Just run around.
Stefan Johansson talking with his engineer. Stefan, can you tell us what you were telling the crew here as to what the feeling was, what happened?
Well, it just felt like the back end was bottoming out over the bump going through between 3 and 4. It just felt like both rear wheels just came off the ground altogether and spun me around. I mean, it's just totally unexpected. You know, they really, had a pretty steady balance in the car through, the 1 and 2 and 3, and then just caught me out totally.
Now, we appreciate the fact that you're all right and speak with us. Hope that 93 chassis maybe get the job done.
I hope so.
Paul?
Of course, he does actually have one lap into the book, and should they be able to repair the car, which obviously doesn't seem likely, he could take that car and take the one lap time that is on it. We're watching Christian Fittipaldi. He is a rookie in the Indy cars this year. He drives a 95 Renard powered by a Cosworth and races on Goodyear tires. Still warming up on the Milwaukee Mile. Beautiful day here, nice crowd. And one more lap of warm-up, and then Christian Fittipaldi will be on his 2-mile qualifying run. He takes the fastest of both laps. It looks like a pretty erratic turn in into turn 1 there on that lap. He's feeling the car out and getting it shaken in.
Paul, one of the things these guys do on the warm-up laps, they do exactly that. They yank the car down into the corner to find out what it'll do when they're up to full speed, and now we'll find out for sure from Christian Fittipaldi.
So Christian starts his run down and works turn 1 and 2. Time to beat is still 159.6 miles an hour. Nice flat mile here, very little banking whatsoever on the Milwaukee Mile, the oldest continually operated track in the United States for motor racing. First lap complete, 1 to go. And Christian Fittipaldi at 22.9, 157.124 miles an hour. But very unusual line, Jan Beekes. Coming out way wide, then pitching her in hard.
Well, Paul, a lot of times when you start up high and you pull it down low, that means that you're having understeer. We asked Derek Walker about that. He says, yeah, our cars right now are pushing. But yet we heard on the radio other guys like Vassar say their cars are loose. Right now these guys are having a hard time finding the balance on that machine.
Boy, that second lap really paid off for Christian Fittipaldi. It moved him up to third quick. The 22.7, 158.2 miles an hour. So Christian Fittipaldi made the second lap of his qualifying run really pay off for him, and moves to the inside of the second row, pushing Vassar, Johansson, Guerrero, and Zampedri all down in the field and bringing Michael Andretti out to the line. My question, Jan Beekes, as we watch Andretti warm up, Ford Cosworth has been moving back and forth between two different engines this year. They didn't run their more advanced engine in Indianapolis, but what's their plans now?
Well, the plans right now is that the Series 2 engine is still only with the factory teams. That'd be Michael Andretti, Newman Haas, Paul Tracy, and then of course the Ganassi team with Herta and also with Jimmy Vassar. At the moment they're continuing to develop the Series 2 and have not released it to any of the other 4 teams at the moment.
So 1 lap now until the green flag for Michael Andretti. You see his best practice speed there at 159 miles an hour. That would be just a tick under Raul Boysel's pole run at 159.6. And you add a little adrenaline into that. Maybe Michael can take the pole away from Raul Boisel. After the luck he's had this year, he certainly would want to. Remember, he's had more than his share of poles. 3 of them thus far. Has been unable to convert those poles into wins. So Michael Andretti. Kmart Texaco 95 Lola Cosworth with Goodyear tires. And he's second quick. Michael Andretti is second quick at the conclusion of the first lap with a 22.5, 159.3 miles an hour, Gary Gerald.
And Christian Fittipaldi walking along. How happy are you? You're seemingly getting very comfortable on these ovals.
It's getting better, but the run could be a little bit stronger. I guess we have to improve the car a little bit more. The balance just wasn't perfect today, and let's see in the race now.
Thank you, Christian.
You can hear that cheer. That's because Michael Andretti ran that second lap at 22.3, 161.018 miles an hour, and that puts Michael on the pole. And it ups the ante a little bit here in qualifying in the Miller Genuine Draft 200 from the Milwaukee Mile at Wisconsin State Fair Park. We're back at Wisconsin State Fair Park. And Robbie Gordon has just taken out onto the mile, ready for his qualifying run. Now we've had a change in the order, of course, as Michael Andretti, with his run just before we left you, jumped up and on the pole at 161.018 miles an hour. Raul Boisel is now outside the front row with 159.6, so his chance of repeating his back-to-back pole positions here has gone away for Raul Boisel. Robbie Gordon giving the car a very solid pitch as we watch from a camera mounted just ahead of the rear wing.
Paul, remember we talked about that the Walker cars seem to be pushing a little bit. A lot of the other cars are getting loose. Michael Andretti radioed in that even though he got the pole, the thing got big time sideways in turn number 4. So maybe the Walker cars, which started with a push this morning, will be right where they want them at the moment.
Well, that's certainly what happened to Stefan Johansson as well. It just jumped loose up between 3 and 4. Gary Gerald?
Michael Andretti is out. Now, we talked about the shot at the pole. You're on the pole for the moment. Do you think it's going to be good enough to hold it?
I don't think so. I think that's an okay time, but I think it'll probably be about 3rd or 4th.
So you're basically happy?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, basically happy, Paul.
Robbie Gordon's first lap is enough to put him inside the second row with a 22.5, 159.5 miles an hour. We'll see if he can improve on it with his second lap. Michael Andretti was able to, and it put him on the pole. There goes the second lap. Boy, he brought her right out there. So as Robbie Gordon slows down, he moves to second quick with a 22.4, 160.4 miles an hour. So now Robbie Gordon is alongside Michael on the outside of the front row. We've replaced the top 2 positions in this field with the last 2 runs. And now it's Paul Tracy, who can be unbelievably quick. He has the advantage, wouldn't you think, Jan Bikus, of having gotten whatever information that Michael Andretti learned during his run. They make a change to the car, change to the wings. They can do all that in the last second. So if they got good information out of Michael, then maybe a change exists on this car. Paul Tracy is ready to go.
Paul, talking about those changes, we asked that exact question to find out if they had the opportunity to get information from Michael and pass it on to Paul Tracy. He said, yes, we got information, but we've decided to make no changes on Paul's car. Obviously, they think he has what he needs today.
All right, so keep an eye on the rear end of that car. Make sure that it stays stuck to the track. Keep an eye on his hands, too. If you find his hands dialing a little bit to the right, that means he's fighting a loose condition. He brings it way high, 161. That belongs to Michael. Speed to beat, still warming up for Paul Tracy.
Paul, he was just a little slower than Michael in this morning's session, but we know Paul Tracy, he really gets aggressive in qualifying.
All right, let's go to Gary.
And Robbie Gordon has that colorful helmet off. You won on the mile at Phoenix. Now you're, for the moment, outside front row. Do you think it's going to be good enough to stay in the front row?
You know, we understeered a little bit in qualifying. I think it'll be good enough to stay. I thought we had Michael, but we'll see.
You're happy with the way it's standing? Well, we're waiting for a time on Paul Tracy. We'll get the indication in just a moment. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks.
Paul Tracy's first lap, 22.5, 159.9. That makes him 3rd quick for the day. So he's not threatening Robbie Gordon yet. There's the second lap complete. And still not good enough to take Gordon off the front row. 22.5, 159.9. So Paul Tracy right now is 3rd quick.
Thank you.
So they line up. Michael Andretti, Robbie Gordon, the front row. Paul Tracy, Raul Boisel, the second row. Then Mauricio Guzman and Christian Fittipaldi in 3. Jimmy Vasser and Stefan Johansson if he chooses to start in that car. And then Carlos Guerrero and Alessandro Zampedri. There's the numbers for Paul Tracy, as now Bobby Rahal begins his warm-up roll. Bobby Rahal at age 42 now, becoming one of the older drivers in the sport, as we're seeing so many retirements in the past couple of years.
Paul, we had an opportunity to get a report that with Paul Tracy's run, that they were having a pop-off problem like a lot of these people are. In fact, he had a very difficult time getting that valve closed, getting the boost that he wanted for his run.
Yeah, Jan, you seem to hear that all the time. We're having some sort of a pop-off problem. What are we talking about there?
Well, what it is, Paul, is that they try and run it right absolutely at the limit, and we're now on a rough track, and it's hard to keep those things closed.
All right, as Bobby Rahal starts his run, here's Gary.
Paul, did you have any problems with the pop-off valve and the boost?
I'll tell you what, the new valve that CART has introduced is complete garbage. I had the valve blow off probably 40 times during that run. It blew off 8 times down the straightaway on my final lap, and it's ultimately what caused us to go slow, I had 43 inches of boost the whole run, and that was it.
So how much did that cost you in terms of speed or time on the track?
I think at least it cost us at least a quarter of a second at least. You know, I feel the car was working well. It's just the valve kept blowing off and blowing off. And, you know, we've had terrible valves the whole weekend, so it's the new valve they've introduced isn't very good at all.
So what do you do about the race tomorrow?
Well, take what you're given, I guess. That's what they're saying.
Thank you.
All right, Bobby Rahal's run only good enough to put him 9th quick in the field with a 22.9 157. We'll be right back. Back at the Milwaukee Mile, the Miller Genuine Draft 200 qualifying a run for the pole here as we're watching the Indy 500 champion, brand new champion less than a week ago. 6 days ago, Jacques Villeneuve was being crowned as a brand new champion of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. There's Bobby Rahal, angry as he pulls in. You can see why. That speed certainly wouldn't make anybody happy as he slams the wheel down when he begins to climb out of the car. So Bobby Rahal very disappointed with the fact that he is 9th quick and Jacques Villeneuve out on the course. One more lap of warm-up. Young man, extremely talented man. Talking to some former Formula One drivers last week after Indy, and they said that that Indy win, should he decide to move over to Formula One, that win alone will add about $8 or $9 million to his overall salary because of the prestige that Indianapolis holds on a global basis. Of course, with the worldwide coverage of the IndyCar Series now. Speed to beat now is Andretti still up 161.018. Jan?
Paul, remember that the setups at the Indy 500 are not close at all to what the setups they use here on the Milwaukee Mile. And as a result, this morning, Jacques Villeneuve was only in 16th position. We'll have to see if they made the necessary changes for him to get the kind of speed he's looking for.
First lap now complete for the young Canadian. 10th quick, 22.9, 156.9. Not going to be happy with that one.
Paul, they run a different underbody on the Reynards at the Speedway than they do here, and that produces a whole lot of downforce, and therefore you have to come up with a new setup, and right now it looks like they don't have it quite dialed where they want.
And of course they don't have nearly the practice time, but with a little guts there and perhaps some better sticking tires, Jacques Villeneuve jumps up to 6th quick with a 22.6, 158.706 miles an hour.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if that was exactly how you described it. That was all Jacques doing that one. I bet the car wasn't exactly how they wanted it, and he just held it down.
Reach up there and pull on those straps, tighten it down, and nail your foot down, hoping it stays stuck. Now here's some cars we did not see at the Indianapolis 500. The terrible disappointment, the stunning disappointment of the Penske team. Here is Al Unser Jr. They're back here. One can presume that they feel like they have a great deal to make up for. Let's go to Gary Carroll.
Well, here's the pop-off valve. Another driver who's very unhappy, I gather, Bobby. It was blowing all the way.
Yeah, I mean, this morning it was fine. They said they checked it and everything was okay. And I went out wanting to run 44 inches. The entire both those laps with the valve wide open. I couldn't get it to shut. You know, so
now for people who are not
very disappointing.
People who are uninitiated. When you lose an inch of that boost, what does that translate to in horsepower or speed?
Well, it's not an inch. It's only getting 42 inches. So that's about 75 horsepower.
Well, there's a very unhappy race driver.
800 plus, down to that number. Uh-oh. Al Unser Jr. Mercedes-Benz power, Penske chassis. Certainly it has to be going through his mind of making up for their performance in Indianapolis, or non-performance as it is. Jan Migas.
Paul, the interesting thing is we talked about the Reynard chassis at the moment. They had a different configuration. The Penske does not. Chuck Sprague said the only thing different on this car is the springs, the gears, and the wings. And they think that configuration works much better here than it did at the Speedway.
Well, and Penske cars have performed well with 2 different wins this year, one with Fittipaldi at Nazareth, one with Al Unser Jr. at Long Beach. Because I think now he can probably win Long Beach in a go-kart. Scored the win so many times there. Al Unser Jr. puts it on the pole. 22.3, 161, 191. Al Unser Jr. Boy, did he just make up for Indianapolis.
Paul, the crew down here is going crazy. This is exactly what they were hoping for.
So Al Unser Jr. at 161, 191 makes up for anything in the month of May and sits on the pole, but it is provisional. We'll be back. back on the Milwaukee Mile, where Al Unser Jr. just snatched the pole away from Michael Andretti. So who could take it away from him? Maybe Emerson Fittipaldi, his teammate. Gary?
Well, Al, I don't know that anything in the world takes up for what you missed a week ago at Indianapolis, but certainly this has got to help make you and your team feel a whole lot better.
Well, we feel a little bit better. You know, I was telling Roger, I just hope I'm in the show this weekend, you know, and so really the team's doing a great job, and the big disappointment from, you know, last week is just, you know, what can you do? You know, I said a little bit earlier, you know, we can't cry over spilt milk. We just gotta fill that glass back up again and drink out of it.
A lot of teams have been complaining about boost, but I don't hear any complaints here. Your valve worked all right in your run?
No, I was low on my valve too, and you know, it's a brand new valve, and Cart's working it out, and we'll work out the kinks, you know, as long as everybody's the same. That's what's critical about this, and from what I gather, you know, everybody's a little bit low on their valve, and so as long as we're all the same, then that's good.
Thanks, Junior.
Thank you.
All right, so Al Unser Jr., while his teammate Emerson warms up. Emerson could take the pole away. Maybe Scott Pruitt could. Let's go back to Gary.
The Indy 500 winner, Jack Villeneuve, is here. How happy were you with your qualifying run, and did you have problems with your valve in the boost?
Well, in a way I was happy because up to this morning we were pretty slow actually, and we were 4/10 quicker than this morning, so the car was better. You know, we had a lot of problems this morning, and we took a gamble getting into qualifying. We changed a lot of things because the car wasn't that it was supposed to be, and you know, the car was running stronger in qualifying. I didn't have time to get on the limit of it, but you know, as long as we're faster than this morning, that's what's important. And yeah, we have a problem with the valves too.
Thanks, Jack. And that crowd reaction indicates something with Fittipaldi out there, right, Paul?
Oh, you bet. Emerson Fittipaldi just took the pole away from his teammate Al Unser Jr. on the first lap with a 22.3. So now it's a Penske front row. Emerson on the pole, and little Al will start outside. There's still some cars coming up, though, that could, in fact, make a difference. I would guess that Scott Pruitt might, in fact, be one of them. 161.201 miles an hour for Emerson Fittipaldi to put him on the pole for tomorrow's running of the Indy cars here in Milwaukee.
Paul, I'd have to think they're a little bit concerned about Scott Pruitt right now. He came and tested here when everyone else was at Indianapolis. There's a 14-day rule, meaning he had to come out here right after he qualified for the Indy 500. He did a lot of running. We also know the Firestone tires seem to work better in these hot conditions. So maybe Penske isn't safe yet, but obviously very pleased at the moment.
Well, you're right, Jan. Both very much factors that can figure into this run as Scott Pruitt warms up. Emerson comes in a lot happier than we saw him 2 weeks ago. Last day of qualifying at Indianapolis when he was bumped out of the field. This, without question, the young man to watch. Still looking for his first IndyCar win. Incredibly fast. Remember, this team spent an entire year testing this new tire. One that proved so very strong in Indianapolis, and in fact, had Scott Goodyear not passed the pace car, then Firestone and Honda would theoretically have been in the winner's circle at Indy. One more lap, he'll start his qualification run in his number 20 car. There's Emerson's speed. That's the speed to beat. Al Unser Jr. on the outside of the front row. Where will Scott Pruitt end up? Can he knock Fittipaldi off the pole?
Something interesting about these tires, not only the Firestone, but also Goodyear's. They're running softer tires this year, and if you look on the outside of this groove, there's a lot of rubber buildup right now that these guys are going to have to make sure they stay below.
It looks like he is able to, in fact, run a much lower line here. Watching for Pruitt. He comes across the line. Not very good. 14th quick, 22.9. 22.9. Scott Pruitt's not going to do it with that. He's really going to have to pick up this lap, and I'm not so sure it's possible.
Boy, I wonder, Paul, how fast he was this morning. I wonder if he's another one of these drivers with valve problems. That's much slower than everyone expected.
Well, in fact, it's so slow. You probably have to accredit it to valve, but he does jump up to 9th quick with a 22.7, 158. We're back in in Milwaukee, Eddie Cheever completes the second of 2 qualifying laps. He really was squarely coming off of 3 and into 4 on the last lap. This time, running nice and clean, completing his first qualification lap, running at 16th position, 22.8, 157.5 miles an hour. But as he started that lap, he really had the back end tracking. See what happens here. While we've been away, Matsushita's qualified. So has Fernandez, Herta, and Ribeiro qualified 4th quick. So Eddie Cheever has completed his run and qualifies in 16th position. But Emerson Fittipaldi right now has the pole by just the narrowest of margins.
Emerson, just 0.02 of a second separates you and your teammate for the moment on the pole. Now, is there anybody left out there that you're concerned about that may knock you off the top spot?
Well, Gary, I think there are potential 2 or 3 drivers that could get us there. I mean, it was a great comeback from Albertine Penske after Indy. You know, it's nice to be running strong again. It's beautiful. It's a great feeling.
It's the first part of a statement. I guess the second part of the statement comes tomorrow.
I hope so.
Thank you, Emerson.
So Eddie Cheever climbs out of his car, and qualifying continues with just a couple drivers left to go. Danny Sullivan, Eliseo Salazar, and Teo Fabi is the last in the lineup. There's Sullivan on the track. Teo was the fastest in the practice this morning, so we could still see the pole changing here at Milwaukee.
Paul, he was quite a bit faster. He was a full, well, not quite 0.06 of a second, which is, you know, it doesn't sound like much, Paul, but with that kind of advantage, Teo Fabi being at the end of the line, certainly a challenger.
And of course, he has the advantage of all the information that's come down from everyone else as to how their cars are handling. And Teo is an engineer. Maybe he can apply some of his aerodynamical engineering and figure out exactly what that car ought to have. There's the board posting the times and speeds for everybody thus far as we move toward the end of the qualifying. Scott Pruitt, first we wondered, was it a valve problem, but the real problem apparently was a push developing on the car. So it was a handling problem that kept Pruitt from making any strong run at the pole. He qualified in 11th position. Here we go now for Danny Sullivan. Solid turn into the first turn. That speed is Fittipaldi's at 161.2. Danny Sullivan, part of the 2-car Pac West team, teamed up with Mauricio Gugelmin. Gugelmin qualified inside the 5th row. And again, hopefully the passing of information has been beneficial to Danny. But not that strong. Danny Sullivan, 23.1 on the first lap. 155.4. So Danny Sullivan is going to have to make up a lot of time right here if he's going to do it. Doesn't seem likely. 19th quick at the end of the first lap for Danny Sullivan, and nothing changes. Danny Sullivan is still the 19th quick here at Milwaukee, and Fittipaldi still has the pole, but Fabi is coming up. While we were away, Eliseo Salazar qualified 18th. This is Teo Fabi, and he is a potential car to take the pole position as he starts his first of 2 laps. He was quickest in morning practice here on the Milwaukee Mile. He has the benefit of having listened to everything the other drivers said as they came around. Most of them complaining about the pop-off valve, dropping their horsepower by dropping their boost pressure every time they got hard into the throttle. Teo Fabi's first lap. And he takes the pole. Teo Fabi takes the pole with a 22.2, 161.8. Teo Fabi takes the pole away from Emerson Fittipaldi. Can he pick up the speed on this second lap? Oh, what a run.
Paul, we had a chance to ask the crew if they made any changes by what they heard other people had done. They said, no, we're not going to let anyone else psych us up. Right now, they used the exact same setup and put him on the pole.
Right here in the heat of the day, Teo Fabi picks up his speed to 162.4 miles an hour and takes the pole away from Emerson Fittipaldi as the last qualifier of the day. We'll be right back.
You talk about drama. Last guy out there, fast this morning, but everybody said in the heat, there's no way. Did you think you could win the pole?
I wasn't sure because we had a little problem at the end of this morning practice, so we were not sure about the car, but I think we made the right adjustment. The car was just fabulous.
And this young team is on the move. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations to Teo, who takes the 10th pole of his career and his first since '90 as he shoves Emerson Fittipaldi aside. We'll look at the entire starting field here for you. Andre Ribeiro with a really nice run on his car, powered by Honda. We'll flip on down through the entire field. Here's a surprise in the 6th row. Jacques Villeneuve, the Indy champion, not qualifying nearly to his liking. Everybody's saying that they had problems with the valves here today. And one other story that you did not see, and that's because this morning Lynn St. James was involved in an accident here. She was scheduled to drive. She was not injured. They should be able to put her car back together, and she will... 85